Chapter 2. On a cold December morning in Old Delhi, while planning my journey to seek the yogis and sages in the Himalayas, I happened to look up at a sign plastered on an old Victorian building. The World Yoga Conference was to be held in New Delhi, beginning that very day at 9:00 a.m. Excited, I rushed to the site. A British yogi, Christopher Hills, impelled by his love for India, had organized this huge and prestigious event. The coming 4 days promised a bazaar of gurus, yogis, lamas, pundits, and sages, sharing their gifts with the world. Some, after decades of seclusion in the jungles, promised to show their faces to civilization. From morning to night, darshans, or spiritual meetings, were conducted simultaneously in 7 locations. Later, I would learn that 800 yogis had assembled for the event. I couldn't believe my good fortune. On the first day, in a large tent, I first met with one of the greatest masters of yoga, Sri B.K.S. Iyengar. He lucidly explained the science of Hatha Yoga while his students demonstrated various asanas, or physical poses meant to harmonize body, mind, and soul. One of Sri Iyengar's students sat with his legs wrapped behind his neck. Another balanced on his forearms with his legs bowing backward, touching his head with his feet. Yet another stood motionless on his head, while another balanced on one foot, arched his back, and pulled the other foot over his head. Another yogi swallowed a long strip of cloth, then pulled it back out as an internal cleanse. Another student, to clean his sinus, fed a thin rope up through his nose and pulled it out through the mouth, pulling it back and forth. I marveled at how easily they had accomplished these practices due to their early training from an accomplished master. All the while, Sri Iyengar explained the benefits of each technique to the audience. I was deeply inspired by the conviction and compassion in which he taught. I could feel his burning desire to share the gift of yoga with all of the world. In the years to come, Sri Iyengar was to become a dear friend and well-wisher. As I came out of the tent, I was approached by an older man, a small, thin Buddhist monk from Southeast Asia. He had a shaved head and wore bright orange robes. Beaming a bright smile, he introduced himself as Bhikkhu Vivekananda. He was fascinated by me, a young American seeking God. We became close companions at the conference. Bhikkhu was the spiritual leader for thousands of monks in a monastery in Thailand. He had traveled a great distance to attend the conference. Although over 50, he was exuberant as a teenager. He explained the Buddhist philosophy with his sweet Thai accent, and we explored the yoga conference together. It was also at this yoga conference that I first met Swami Rama, who has since become renowned as the founder of the Himalayan Institute. A towering man with a regal stride, pristine robes, and a dignified aura, he commanded awe. His eyes were deep and dark, and his head was framed by silver hair brushed straight back to his shoulders. I was eager to learn more about him, as I would be about many participants in the conference. In addition to asking his disciples to tell me about him, I read everything I could get my hands on about his background. Born in 1925 in a village in the Himalayan mountains, Swami Rama had wandered since childhood, living among rishis, holy men, in the jungles. With a booming voice, he told of how his guru had instructed him to bring the ancient wisdom of the Himalayan sages to the West. Try your best, Swami Rama's master told him, but whenever you feed your ego or try to do anything selfish, you will not succeed. This is my blessing to you, that whenever you want to become selfless, loving, and without ego, you will find a great force behind you, and you will never fail to achieve some good. To exhibit the powers of yoga, Swami Rama brought several American doctors. While he entered into yogic trance, they connected his body with modern diagnostic devices. He demonstrated, among other things, that he could consciously raise the temperature of a spot on the left side of his hand 10 degrees, slow his heart rate from 74 beats per minute to 52 in just 50 seconds, produce specific brainwave patterns on demand, consciously move a physical object halfway across the room, and even stop his heart altogether. Coming out of the trance, Swami Rama explained, all of the body is in the mind. Mind over matter is developed by control of consciousness. You really do not need to know many things, but you definitely need to practice what you know. Placing his palms together, he added, I did this not to show that I am superhuman, but to demonstrate the science of yoga. He went on to explain that although yoga had been practiced since the most ancient time, it was the greatest of all sciences. Based neither on superstition nor sectarianism, yoga could achieve what modern scientists cannot explain. It is, he said, the science by which one realizes the enlightened state within. I was sincerely impressed with Swami Rama. When I appealed for his blessings, he said in his deep voice, the foundation of your spiritual path will be to keep the company of holy people. He raised his open palm to me. The blessings of sages will carry you across all obstacles on the path. Each night, I slept alone on the ground under a banyan tree near the conference center. In the morning, I awoke to the calling of a hawk as it spread its wings from the nest overhead and soared high into the sky. While waiting for the doors to open, I meditated under that tree in the brisk Delhi air. The closing session of the conference was held in the Vigyan Bhavan, New Delhi's largest concert hall. 3,000 people assembled that evening, seeking knowledge and blessings from the assembly of yogis. Christopher Hills, the organizer, reminded us of our fortune to be in one room with so many spiritual masters. Then, to our surprise, he announced that the program must conclude punctually at 7:00 p.m. Unbeknownst to us at the time, he had been informed that he and other swamis would be shot by fanatics at 8. But how could a program of so many swamis and yogis, especially in India, possibly end on time? When it became clear that not all would be given the chance to speak, one yogi jumped to his feet and attacked Christopher Hills with a barrage of insults. Christopher endeavored to satisfy everyone present, but an underlying tension was brewing. Minutes before 7, Christopher Hills nervously took the microphone in his hand and stood in silence for a moment before announcing that the time had come for the conference to end. A Swami began chanting the closing Om, which I knew to be a divine vibration meant to put our consciousness in harmony with God. This punctual ending outraged some of those who were deprived the chance to speak. Even while the Om was being sounded, an uproar ensued as some of the yogis grappled to grab the microphone. One of them got hold of the mic and rambled on like a politician with flaming eyes. Aghast, the audience watched a battle of yogis on stage. Were these the men who were supposed to bring peace and harmony to the world? Nobody knew what to say or do. Bhikkhu Vivekananda and I just shook our heads. My innocent expectations were disappointed. Finally, Christopher Hills heroically seized the microphone and wrenched the wire out of its socket. Then he disappeared behind the stage. The conference was over. After the program in a solitary hall near the chaotic auditorium, I came upon a tall, thin man with long white hair, flowing beard, and saffron robes, a person of venerable presence who looked like an ancient sage right out of the Holy Scriptures. Swami Satchitananda welcomed me with a jolly smile and entrancing gaze. As a disciple of the famous Himalayan saint, Swami Shivananda, Swami Satchitananda had taken the ancient science of yoga to the West and had followers from around the world. His interfaith work would always seek to bring people of various religions together under the oneness of the Spirit. In his first meeting with the Pope, Swami Satchitananda praised the Pope for working to unite Christians worldwide, but then quickly added, "Now, why don't you come forward to bring the whole world together? Not only Christians should come together, but all people in the name of religious harmony." An appearance at the legendary Woodstock Rock Festival had given him overnight national fame as the Woodstock Guru. The promoters of the event asked that he give the opening address, hoping he would create a peaceful mood. After being flown in by helicopter, he faced hundreds and thousands of hippies and spoke about how sound controls the universe, and America leads the world. He urged the American youth to use their sound of music to create peace and joy. "Let us not fight for peace," he said. "Let us find peace within ourselves first." During the yoga conference, I had carefully observed how he maintained grace and dignity through the recent chaos. Now, in a tender voice, he said to me, "I am sorry that you had to see this fighting. Please understand that each person is on his or her own level of progress. Even among practitioners, we cannot expect everyone to be perfect. If we judge others for their faults, we fall into a trap. It will be better to put your faith in those of good character and cultivate your own yoga practice." His disposition was calm and poised, and his slow and powerful way of speaking moved me. He instructed me that we are beings of happiness, love, and light, but that we have forgotten this because we identified too much with our bodies and minds. We were fine originally, and lost that fineness. That's when we became defined, he said. The essence of yoga and religion, he said, was to enable us to align with our forgotten nature as spirit. Yoga is the process of refinement. He stressed that we overcome our mind's tendency towards self-centered concerns in order to realize our essential nature. There is only one cause for all worries and anxieties: selfishness. The process he taught for attaining this realization of essential nature became known to the world as integral yoga, a synthesis of 6 yoga disciplines. Swami Satchidananda presented spirituality in a down-to-earth, insightful, and often humorous manner. With gratitude, I took my leave. Standing erect, the Swami spoke with a graceful wave of his slender hand. Be sincere and disciplined in your practice. A true yogi is one who lives with the highest human conduct. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and opened his palm to me in blessing. Richard, you have come a long way. May you discover the treasure of your heart. That night, Bhikkhu Vivekananda and I attended an independent lecture by the world-renowned author and orator, J. Krishnamurti. We entered a large tent or pandal and took seats in the second row of chairs. As the pandal rapidly filled, a man of about 60 sat beside us. His name was Dilip. Would you like to hear something about the life of J. Krishnamurti? He asked. He is my teacher. Please, we responded. He crossed his legs, leaned back in his chair, and began. He told us that Krishnamurti was born in South India in 1895, and as a child was discovered by the renowned clairvoyant Charles Leadbeater. Both Leadbeater and Annie Besant, who was the leader of the Theosophical Society, proclaimed that the child was the vehicle of the same world teacher who spoke through Christ. Annie Besant educated the boy in England and brought him around the world, where thousands received him as the next Messiah and formed the Order of the Star around him. When he was 27, he formally accepted the role as the enlightened master and was soon worshipped by over 60,000 members. Dilip leaned forward. But in 1929, he rejected his position as master, dissolved his religious movement, and suddenly everyone rose as J. Krishnamurti appeared on the stage. An elderly man of 75, he was small and slender and impeccably dressed in a Nehru jacket and loose pants. His smooth-shaven face was worn by the lines of age, and his predominantly white hair gave him a scholarly distinction. His soft eyes glistened with enthusiasm as he welcomed the assembly graciously in a British accent. Soon enough, though, he launched into a call for revolution. Shaking his clenched fist, he declared, "You have too many gurus in this country. They have told you what to do, what to think, what to practice. They are dictators." Pin-drop silence filled the tent. Truth is a pathless land, but yoga, with its breathing and postures, is nothing more than psychosomatic acrobatics. Ashrams and monasteries are concentration camps of the mind. He paused and looked right into my eyes, When you have a system of meditation, it is no longer meditation, but is utterly futile, has no meaning whatsoever. He told a story about the devil who was walking with a friend. They witnessed a man ahead of them. He was on the road picking up a brilliant object. The devil's friend turned and asked what the man had found. The devil answered, "He has picked up the truth." "That's bad business for you," the friend said. "Not at all," the devil replied. "I am going to help him organize it." To make this point more emphatic, Krishnamurti closed his eyes and slowed down his speech. "We must bring about a revolution in ourselves. But how can this take place when our lives are superficial, spending years in the office, living a shallow, empty existence?" He leaned forward and said, "Man cannot be enlightened through any organization, creed, dogma, priest, or ritual, nor through any philosophic knowledge or psychological technique. He has to find it through understanding the contents of his own mind, through observation, not through intellectual analysis or introspective dissection." I shuddered to think of how this discourse would affect my dear Bhikkhu Vivekananda. After all, he was the guru of thousands of monks in an organized monastery teaching meditation and ritual. I turned to him and whispered, "Bhikkhu, he is attacking everything you have dedicated your life to. What do you feel?" Bhikkhu's eyes widened in wonder and exclaimed, "What he says is true." Taken aback, I asked, "What are you going to do now, Bhikkhu?" His features turned grave. "I will have to think seriously about this." For the next few days, we attended a series of talks given by Krishnamurti, where he demonstrated an amazing power of logic and conviction. Even though he was renowned as one who could answer any question and defeat any argument on a personal level, he was gentle, kind, and humorous. I pondered his teaching. Eastern literature was filled with histories of enlightened saints who carefully followed their religion or their particular guru. How could I disregard them all on the basis of one man's realization? However, Krishnamurti had impressed upon me that superficiality had no place in spiritual life. We must take personal responsibility. If we become overly attached to the externals, we may forget their very purpose, to purify the heart. One day, while sitting under the shade of a peepal tree with Bhikkhu, I asked if he knew what he was going to do. He ran his finger along the edge of his begging bowl. "Yes, Richard, I do." He said, "I will return to my monastery in Thailand." "Really?" I responded. "So what is your opinion of Krishnamurti's teachings?" He stared off into the middle distance in thought, and then he spoke. "I will follow Mr. J. Krishnamurti." A mischievous little smile played on his lips. "Shall I tell you how?" "Yes, please." "I will reject the teachings of the teacher who teaches us to reject teachers and teachings." He jested in his sweet Thai accent. Later that day, I bid farewell to Bhikkhu and wandered on foot to Connaught Circus, the commercial center of the city. Here I sat beneath an ashok tree and wrote these words to my family in America. The way India is affecting me is beyond words. This is all that could be said. Deep love lies in my heart for all of you. I pray that you are well. Richard, New Delhi, India, December 1970. Designed by the British, Connaught Circus was laid out in an immense circle surrounding a spacious park. Exploring the enclosed walkway, my attention was drawn to a hand-painted sign that read, S.S. Brijabasi and Sons Religious Artwork. Stacked on the sidewalk were hundreds of 8x10 prints. I was lured to look closer. The prints, full of marvelous figures that struck me as very odd, yet very beautiful, were like windows into a world of colors, mysteries, and magic. I wanted to keep one as an object for my meditation. Looking into my small bag, I saw I had barely enough change to buy a single image. For about an hour, I sat on the sidewalk searching the selection. Among the pictures was a beautiful woman with 8 arms, holding swords, choppers, and spears, and riding on a lion. Then a fantastical, somewhat pudgy man with the head of an elephant who was sitting on a mouse. Flipping through them, I found the picture of a handsome blue person with 4 arms decorated with elegant ornaments lying on a multi-headed serpent. Next was a tranquil yogi, immersed in meditation with snakes wrapped around his limbs, the moon resting on his head and water gushing up from his hair. And then there was a heroic boy holding a spear riding on a peacock. I came across a magnificent monkey wearing a crown whose eyes shone with devotion. Smiling, he flew through the sky, effortlessly carrying a mountain in the palm of his hand. As I rummaged deeper through the stack of prints, I discovered a person with a dozen heads, each of a different species and multiple arms. Gruesome people were flying into and being devoured by his flaming mouths. This art was beyond description. The figures unbelievable. Were they from fairy tales or mythology? I didn't know, but I felt that the art was inspired. I wondered how I could possibly choose only one. Suddenly, out from the stack of prints appeared a personality that attracted me like no other. He had a bluish complexion, wore a peacock feather in his crown, and played a flute while posing gracefully beside a river. Behind him, a white cow stared lovingly, and a full moon bathed an enchanted forest in pearly light. Spontaneous tears filled my eyes. The person in the picture seemed to fill my very soul. Why was this happening to me? I felt him calling me. But how? It was only a painting, and of a fantastical person I didn't even know. His name was written on the bottom in an ancient alphabet I couldn't read. I gave whatever money I had to the shopkeeper, but it was not enough. He smiled and gave me the picture anyway, a picture I would not part with during the rest of my travels. Who was this person in the image? For a long time, that was to remain a mystery.